Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. It's been a little while since I've done a tag, so I thought I would try one today. It's the Rapid Fire Book Tag, but since I'm a slowpoke, this will not be very rapid. I promise it will be faster than David Murphy's version, but not nearly as funny. Instead of rapid fire, let's call it a slow burn. Let's get right to the questions. Choice 1, ebook or physical book? I will happily read either. In general, I tend to read backlisted books in physical form, although I do sometimes read digital copies from Project Gutenberg for books already in the public domain. To be honest, I have a far better memory for books I read in physical form, down to particular wording on particular pages, etc. And I approach them more analytically for reasons I don't fully understand, maybe because of years of practice in grad school with physical books in my pre-digital life. So, when I have time to acquire a physical copy from my public library, I often will, even if the library also has an e-reader copy available through Libby or Hoopla. I do read a lot of new books digitally, but I don't think I've bought more than just a single handful of ebooks in my whole life. I read digital advanced readers copies from NetGalley or directly from publishers, and I get digital copies of newish books from my library's digital sites, Libby and Hoopla. Honestly, though, I really love having physical copies of the books I love most on my shelves. When they are just on my e-reader, they often stay out of sight and out of mind. If they're on my shelves, I see them every day and think about them regularly. Seeing them sparks me to revisit them more regularly. And of course, the books I have on my shelves are books I bought, new or used, or been given, or picked up at little free libraries in my general neighborhood. Still, right at this particular moment, I am exceptionally glad to have an e-reader. I have a shoulder injury, which I'll talk more about in a future video, so I can't really hold up heavy books. I can read physical copies at the table or at my desk, but not lying in bed or even just sitting on the couch unless I pile up pillows on my lap. So yay for e-readers. The second question, paperback or hardback? I love them both. I tend to write all over my paperbacks, but far less so in my hardbacks. There are times when I know I'm really working hard to understand the nitty-gritty parts of a book where I'll want to take extensive notes, and that's a time when I probably want to pull down a paperback. I have a lot of Penguin Classics and Oxford World Classics paperbacks that are lightweight, and I don't mind writing all over them if I want, for an essay or for preparation for a booktube video even, or just because I'm trying to figure out some aspect of it for my own pleasure. But still, I love reading hardbacks, even if they are library copies I've lugged home that now have crackling, torn plastic wrappers and coffee-stained pages. And in the last year, when I earned more money for an editing project than I was expecting, I bought a few lovely hardback editions of some of my very favorite books. I still haven't shown them here, but I will eventually. Question 3. Online or in-store book shopping? I much prefer in-store book shopping, even when I don't intend to make any purchases. But I have certainly been known to frequent online sites, especially those that sell used books. And actually, I spend a lot of time making lists on online bookshops that I then keep an eye out for in physical bookstores. Number 4, trilogies or series? If I can't just read individual books, I'll say trilogies, but that might just be because I'm so fond of Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall trilogy. I've also got the USA trilogy by John Dos Passos on my list to read at some point. The 5th question, heroes or villains? Neither. Personally, I am far more interested in morally complex characters than I am with characters drawn in black and white, good versus evil terms. My favorite characters are basically good, but still full of flaws they're trying to grapple with. I don't want people who think they are perfect heroes, because no one in the real world can be, no matter how much we want to be. We're all flawed human beings who never understand everything happening around us, and therefore, even when we want to do the right thing, we don't always know what it is. But I do like characters who want to be good, who want to be better than they might actually be, or who for some reason learn to be better over the course of the novel. In other words, what's most interesting to me is how well-meaning people struggle with whatever limitations they have, even whatever villainy they see in themselves. Question 6. What's a book you want everyone to read? How about my own book, Unspeakable, The Story of Junius Wilson? Everyone should read this academic history published by a university press. It'll surely appeal to everyone. Prompt 7. Recommend an underrated book. I absolutely adore a short book by Sarah Orne Jewett called The Country of Pointed Firs, about a woman who basically goes on a writing retreat to a small place in Maine in the U.S., where she talks to the people who've always lived there. Jewett wrote this book at the end of the 19th century, and the book very gently addresses the enormous changes that are happening in the community during that period. The 8th question. What is the last book you've finished? I just finished Joseph O'Malley's Starlight and Moonshine, which I mentioned in my last video. I'll leave a link to the book and to the BookTube channel the author runs down in the description box, and I'll talk about it quite soon. Number 9. What is the last book you bought? The Oxford World Classic version of Hester by Margaret Oliphant, the group read for Victober, BookTube's October celebration of Victorian literature. I'll leave a link to a playlist of all the hosts' announcement videos for that event. Question 10. What is the weirdest thing you've used as a bookmark? Well, this isn't that odd, but I just ran across it as I was pulling down a copy of Charlotte Bronte's Villette to think about reading it during October. Stuck right at the start of the notes section was this. A postcard with a photo of Abraham Lincoln from the Art Institute of Chicago, which my family last visited in 2007 or so. That was the last time I read Villette, I think. Number 11. Used books, yes or no? Absolutely yes. I love to go to used bookstores when I'm traveling, as well as when I'm roaming around the city where I live. And I love getting used books in the mail, too, as you may see in an upcoming video. The 12th question. Top 3 favorite genres. Classics, everything from the ancients to the moderns. Biography, especially the biographies of authors. And academic U.S. social history. Incidentally, while I rarely talk about my reading of academic history, I do want to make a video eventually about a few fairly popular works of history that are both serious and accessible to non-academics, books that I think are quite relevant to the times we're living in right now. Number 13, borrow or buy? Borrow from the public library, either in physical form or digitally. Acquire from little free libraries. Technically that's not buying, but I do contribute to all my little free libraries fairly regularly, so I definitely participate in the wider book barter system. And yes, I buy at used bookstores. And I do borrow and lend with my close friends occasionally. And we all occasionally return the books to each other. Question 14, character or plot? Definitely character for me. Seeing protagonists grow and change over the course of a novel is, in general, what makes me fall in love with particular novels. And I think I look for the same thing in a lot of nonfiction. The change over time we see in biographies is really not that different from character development. I guess my interest in change over time is why I love history too, even if it isn't about specific individuals experiencing that change. In other words, it isn't the events of a book that interest me, but instead it's how those events change the people and culture being written about in those books. And in addition to character and plot, I think there are other features of books, novels and nonfiction, that draw people in. One is language. Because of a few recent experiences, I've come to realize how intensely the writing style shapes whether I respond well to a book. Some books have muscular styles, some are poetic, some are conversational. Different people respond to different styles. And writing style can certainly sometimes affect our enjoyment, maybe even more than the character or plot. Another aspect of books, the ideas being batted around in them. Obviously, a lot of nonfiction addresses ideas, often with very clear theses and a careful laying out of evidence, but sometimes novels effectively do the same thing. Novels of ideas, exploring themes or concepts in a fairly rigorous way. Often the ideas are social or political. Personally, when I'm reading for pleasure, I tend to prioritize narrative over explicit argument, not just in novels, but even in academic nonfiction. So certainly, while I love the idea of a novel of ideas, I tend to love only the ones that are done fairly subtly. Question 15, long or short books? I guess I like books in the middle. But if I had to choose, I'd choose short books. This summer, a lot of folks on BookTube have been talking about big books, either for the big books of summer or that tag about which long books are worth reading or whatever. I've hesitated to respond mostly because so often I am disappointed by long books. I think part of it may be that long novels stretch out partly by having lots of little random diversions that seem to be there only to entertain in the moment rather than contribute to a larger whole. Short books often highlight the change in a particular character or a couple of characters, and they also often use really tight language with lots of allusions, both of which I value in books. Still, there are times where I just want to be able to stretch out with a book for a bit. Hence, I'm a Cinderella reader, and books more than 300 pages but less than 600 might be my sweet spot. Number 16, long or short chapters? Again, moderate chapters are my choice. But let me share one random side story about very short chapters, a book I was thinking about quite recently when talking with another booktuber about a completely unrelated issue. More than half my lifetime ago, I had surgery for a non-cancerous brain tumor, and the healing process took a very long time. It took me months before I could read and think about a newspaper, much less a longer novel. Very early on, a friend gave me a copy of Jane Smiley's novel, 1,000 Acres, which apparently has lots of allusions to Shakespeare's King Lear, among other themes. I don't think I paid any attention at all to any of the themes of the book. Instead, I was literally trying to train my brain to be able to track words across a page and to start to be able to follow written prose again. It was really hard work, and it took forever. But 1,000 Acres is full of very short chapters, many at just a page or two. And each day I would try to work through a chapter. If I came across a longer one, I'd get a friend to read that chapter to me instead. It was quite an experience, and I have an incredibly visceral memory of the process of reading that book, even though I don't remember any of the plot or characters or language of that book. The 17th prompt, name the first 3 books you think of. Let's do novels. Daniel Deronda by George Eliot, Light in August by William Faulkner, and The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Number 18, name books that make you laugh or cry. Well, I'm pretty reserved, so it's more like smile or swallow hard. I definitely can be a quite emotional reader at times, but I stay pretty subtle. Another memory of reading long ago, I was maybe in the 9th grade, and I had traveled with my father to a New England city, to some fancy university where my father was doing historical research in their archives. I sat in the main section of the library, packed with studious undergraduates preparing for their classes, and read a collection of Irma Bombeck pieces my mother had loaned me for the trip. It was hysterical, and I tried so hard not to burst out in loud guffaws in the reading room. It's always harder not to laugh aloud when you're somewhere where you're supposed to be quiet. I think I cried during books more in those years too. I cried my eyes out in elementary school when I first read Sewell's Black Beauty, and I don't think I can make it through that book even now without doing the same. Question 19. Our world or fictional worlds? Well, I love to read about our real world in works of history, and I love to read about fictional versions of some element of the real world. I don't tend to reach for stories about utterly imaginative worlds, like the kinds that appear in science fiction. But I do see why it can be an enormously powerful way to play out ideas. Sometimes those ideas seem subtle in our world, but framing them in a different world can suddenly throw those ideas into relief. I'm thinking about books like Le Guin's Left Hand of Darkness, which gave her a way to raise questions about binary identities and binary thinking more broadly in ways she couldn't have done as easily if she'd been writing about our real world. Now that I think about it, that is yet another book I need to eventually talk about on here, especially since I only read it because of BookTube. Number 20. Audiobooks, yes or no? A few years ago, I would have said I only listened to audiobooks when my family was taking a long car ride together. But in the last couple of years, I've had a few random health issues that have made me very grateful to have had access to audiobooks. A vision issue that took a few months to be solved was the hardest one. And now the injured shoulder has pushed me to consider supplementing my e-reading with audiobooks when my arm is hurting a lot. There is one more part of the audiobook question for me. Maybe this is silly. My spouse David and I used to read aloud to each other every night as we lay in bed. And I miss that so much. I miss hearing his voice. And I miss the time when I was the one reading aloud to him, too. Listening to audiobooks isn't at all the same, but there's at least a little echo of our time together. Question 21. Do you ever judge a book by its cover? I certainly judge covers, but I don't tend to take it out on the book itself. If I already know that a particular book sounds interesting to me, an ugly cover won't matter. But I admit that if I'm in a bookstore and see a really beautiful or striking cover, I'll often pick that book up to poke through a bit, even if I don't know anything about it beforehand. 22. Book to movie or book to TV adaptations? Since I pretty much only watch movies and TV adaptations on my computer, since I don't have a television and rarely go to movie theaters anymore, the difference between book to movie and book to TV doesn't matter much to me. But yes, I do love to watch screen adaptations of books I love, especially when there's several versions. Recently, I rewatched a few adaptations of Jane Austen's Emma and had a blast comparing them not only to her book, but to each other. Number 23, a movie or TV adaptation you preferred more than the book. My two favorite adaptations, where I love the movies as much as the books, are 84 Charing Cross Road and To Kill a Mockingbird. Actually, both books are on my possible upcoming TBR, Charing Cross Road because I read it every New Year's Day, and To Kill a Mockingbird because there's a collection of Harper Lee's stories and essays that will be released this fall. I'm looking forward to both. And the last substantive question, series or standalones? Standalones. I don't read miniseries, and when I do, I tend to choose ones that can be read out of order and that really stand by themselves, even if they're part of a series in some way. I love Marilynne Robinson's set of novels, which are intertwined with each other, but I don't think they would be called a series. Interestingly, I'm slowly reading a volume from a nonfiction series right now, the 5th volume in Peter Ackroyd's series about the history of Britain, the volume where he talks about the Victorian period. And finally, number 25, tag someone else. I want to name Candy at the Great Literary Rabbit Hole, who has a fairly new channel that I'm really loving. I don't think she's done this tag, and in fact, I'm not 100% sure she does tags at all. But Candy, I hope you'll give tags a try, even if it isn't this one, just because it's a great way to participate in the community. I'll extend that to all of you with newish channels. You don't have to wait to be tagged, but participating in these little group conversations, and perhaps especially tagging other booktubers, newbies, and well-established channels alike, is a way to get to know people. And of course, if you have not been tagged yet and would like to do this tag, please consider yourself tagged. And feel free to say I tagged you and link to me in your video so I can find your edition. Well, that will do it for this video. Thanks very much for joining me today here on Hannah's Books. See you soon.